Den 4 november väljs socialisten Zohran Mamdani till borgmästare för New York. Han kommer från Democratic Socialists of America, som är USAs största och snabbast växande socialistiska organisation som driver kampanjer och kandidater till val över hela USA. De sista dagarna har vi haft besök av DSAs 2 coaches, deras 2 ordförande, Megan Romer och Ashik Siddique i Sverige. Och här är ett samtal som vi spelade in tisdagen den 28 oktober med en vecka kvar till valet. Hoppas ni ska tycka det är spännande. If you would look upon 1 year back, could you imagine that in a week you would elect a socialist mayor in New York?
My short answer is no. You know, like I was there at his campaign launch, which was in September, I think, of 20 or maybe early October in 2024. And it was really exciting. It was already really motivating to be running a DSA candidate for mayor. New York City DSA had been campaigning basically for the previous 4 years against Eric Adams, just in general, like not with the intention, I think, of running a mayor person like from DSA, but just because Eric Adams was a terrible mayor. You know, he helped raise rents on millions of New Yorkers. He increased police funding and just increased the police presence against, just very minor things like teenagers skipping a fare, like a kid was shot for skipping fare by police. So just all these things, life got just way more worse for New York City residents. And this is before the corruption scandals started, where just he was so comically corrupt, like all the things that started to come out were just, kind of a perfect storm for a left alternative to present itself. So I think New York City DSA members had been talking for years about like, what do we want to do about the mayor race coming up? It's going to be a big one. In 2020, I think, which is when Eric Adams got elected, or 2021 is the year he got elected. It was a very divided field. There were a bunch of progressive candidates, and the field was divided enough that he ended up becoming the candidate when he was nobody's number one choice, I think, except some of the most ridiculous corrupt people in the city. So, broadly, people on the left, progressives, wanted to avoid that situation again. But there were a lot of conversations about who would be viable. There was a sense that, somebody else was the most viable progressive person who could run. So when there was talk of Zohran being the person from DSA, a lot of people on the broader left were very skeptical. They were just like, well, okay, but you don't want to be a spoiler for Brad Lander, who is the progressive, comptroller, that's like a financial manager. So, plenty of people in DSA felt that way. So I think there were a lot of people who thought, okay, at best, he'll be a good protest candidate, like Bernie Sanders for president. Like, at least we can grow through it. We can send a message. We can communicate to millions of New Yorkers about a socialist platform and agenda. That'll be worth it. And that was kind of enough for me, I thought just, experiencing how much DSA grew through Bernie Sanders running for president. I was satisfied with that, reason for endorsing him. But I think just being at the campaign launch and see what the coalition that he started with was really meaningful. Like, New York City DSA was a core part of it. He would not have run if New York City DSA hadn't already endorsed him and gone through a long process to do that. So that was already meaningful, that he's starting out with a base of 5,000 very committed activists and organizers. But the other organizations there were a Bangladeshi tenant organization called DRUM, Desis Rising Up and Moving, which is really a solid base building organization that organizes South Asian immigrants, mostly in Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, as workers and tenants. This is a community that has really been shut out of the political establishment, totally ignored. And the first person who spoke at his rally was a Bangla-speaking tenant organizer who, just started speaking in her language. That was really meaningful for me as a Bangladeshi American in New York. I'd never seen that before. That just the intention of starting out with communities of workers and tenants that have just been left out of the political system, that was, I just felt like something is different here. This is tapping into something. There are hundreds of people in the audience who are just totally, committed to this. Jewish Voices for Peace was another one, a pro-Palestine organization that's been, really leading a lot of risky direct actions, like taking, really helping shift the ground on politics around Palestine and Israel and the United States. There are a few other ones I'm missing. A New York Communities for Change is another like real base building membership organization. So that he was starting with membership-led working class organizations was just something so different that I thought like, okay, let's see how far this could go. Another one is UAW, United Auto Workers, Region 9A. So anyway, just like starting with organizations that typically did not intervene in local elections this way and just really represented actual working class bases of people, that was just starting out from such a different position. And then when it started to kind of snowball week after week, month after month, with very good communications, with really starting to show that they were building a base. He went for Friday prayers every week to a different mosque in different parts of the city, and just was really showing up for especially different segments of immigrant working class New Yorkers, like Muslims, Latinos, people who were, who'd been ignored by the political establishment or actively antagonized. And that was really powerful. Just it really was bringing together a coalition of new voters, new political force to be reckoned with. And as that started to really, snowball, then it just felt more and more real. So I think from the beginning, I don't think I started out thinking he's going to win, but I think it started out feeling like this is really going to be a force to be reckoned with. And then it just became clear that the Democrats do they have a will to live at this point?
Yeah, I don't think so. They're like laying on the floor.
Andrew Cuomo's so
crying.
Depressed,
he hates New York so much.
He hates himself.
I don't think he's ranking himself first.
Yeah. So I think, it just, kind of the magic started to, express itself, but it was so grounded and like solid organizing.
Yeah, I remember when I saw the first campaign ad on YouTube, and I met Zohran a couple of times. So I just went, oh shit. That's cool, but I didn't see at that point that okay, this could be a run that we DSA could win, but here we are now. Everything points that this is going to be a win. For you, Megan, when did you start believing? Okay, we have a possible winner here.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced. I haven't woken up in an alternative timeline or something. I mean, when did I really? I think it was probably around the primary, like as we were coming into the primary, and especially primary night. So primary night, I had stayed home in upstate New York. There was talk, like, should we send both the co-chairs down? I was like, no, somebody should stay home and like help with the social media and on the back end. And I hate parties and I'm old and don't want to leave the house after 8. But so we're, all kind of waiting on when we're going to repost and when we're going to send a statement. And like the call came at like 8 p.m., which does not happen in the U.S., even in places with sort of our typical voting system, but New York City has ranked choice voting. So we were expecting to have some exit polls to say something about by midnight. To have the call made at 8 p.m., it was like, we won one. We didn't like a little bit win, we way won. So I think that was probably my moment where I was like, what happened? And I think it was actually Ashik who posted it in one of our communications chats, and like they called it, and I was like, check again, like go, like who is they? Like like at the party somebody called it, or it was decisive and overwhelming, and that's exciting.
And there was a discussion afterwards. Okay, Zohran won the primary, but then you thought, okay, now they're going to pour millions over, they're going to find some other dude who's going to run for as an independent or anything. They will do anything they can to stop him. And I guess they tried, but he has been unstoppable. And the guys running seems like the more attention they're getting, the less popular they get. and Zohran just keeps going like this.
Yeah, the trick to beating Andrew Cuomo is to let him talk. Right?
Yeah. I think it's people have asked like, oh, did he get lucky that Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams were just such bad candidates? And I think ultimately it's just like the fact that Democrats could not find anybody else, but just we ended up with these very comically corrupt, like terrible candidates, is an indictment of the establishment itself. So I think
Cuomo did have the establishment behind him in the primary. So this was probably the best they
best they could do. Yeah, so I think there really probably wasn't anybody else who could have gotten in, who would have been viable for representing their politics.
Yeah, I mean, they could have backed Brad Lander and possibly could have beaten us.
But they wanted somebody who was going to be a total stooge of the billionaires, the real estate developers, the Zionist lobby. Like this is their project. So I think there was a lane for someone to the left, and I think I really don't think at this point that somebody who's just progressive enough would have been the one to win. I think this just was the time for a strong socialist agenda and a strong candidate backed by real working class organizations. This just was the right time for it. And a lot of people spent time preparing for a moment like this.
Yeah. And we're now sitting a week to the election, and we're going to be all three of us in New York, hopefully celebrating in a week. But let's back the tape. Let's go back in time, because Zohran's campaign doesn't come out of nowhere. It's a result of many years of work, organizing experiences within the Democratic Socialists of America as a national organization, but especially in New York. So take us through why has this been so successful, and why has DSA been so extremely successful in driving this campaign to this, which will be a historic victory?
Yeah, Zohran's campaign really comes out of New York City DSA, and the story of how that developed starts. It could start in I could start telling it in lots of places, but I think 2017
the International Garment Workers Union in 1918.
Well, there was this guy named Karl Marx. Yeah, but 2017.
Okay, let's not go. Let's keep it in recent years.
Yeah. So DSA grew very rapidly in 2017, which folks can hear about it in the other episode. So in the year that DSA grew all over the country, in New York City, DSA, as it was developing with a lot of new energy, this was a year after the Bernie Sanders campaign. So there were a lot of people who had been volunteers or organizers for that campaign who wanted to figure out what was next. So a bunch of them started locally by running a city council candidate campaign for somebody named Kader El-Yatim in a neighborhood in South Brooklyn called Bay Ridge, which happens to be where I was born and raised. Yeah. I was not part of New York City DSA at the time, but I was just looking from far away like, what? In Bay Ridge, you're running a Palestinian socialist? So he didn't win, but he got about a third of the vote. So it was a pretty big showing. His opponent beat him by only a few points. So New York City DSA members helped organize a very strong base for somebody running on, a left program who was Palestinian. This is a neighborhood that was pretty conservative when I was growing up. Like in America, we call it white working class, like very, kind of Irish, Italian, Catholic. So my family were one of very few like brown people on our block, or like me in school. But over the past 2 decades, it's become much more Arab, much more Muslim. It's the highest concentration of Palestinians now in New York City. So there are a lot of protests there now in recent years. But even in 2017, it felt like, very uncertain. So to have that showing was impressive for the chapter. And there were a lot of volunteers who showed up for the first time in an electoral campaign in New York City DSA. And one of them was Zohran Mamdani. He was a volunteer on that campaign and was somebody who was really, motivated to figure out how to build this organization. So in the year after that, New York City DSA started to, develop more confidence, run more of their own campaigns. In 2018, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was elected in Congress, which was, a big breakthrough also. But DSA was just one of, a bunch of organizations as a coalition that elected her. In the same year, they ran a candidate named Julia Salazar for state senate, who was a pretty fully New York City DSA campaign. I think a lot of the same people who ran Kader El-Yatim's city council race also worked on her campaign. And then she won. And that was really, pretty fully a New York City DSA victory.
Yeah, you can also find a really fun comic book on her first year
Yeah.
in the Senate and how she was elected.
Yeah.
Just a literature tip on the side. Oh, sorry.
So yeah, there are more things that they were doing that were, you know, experimenting and figuring out what could work or not, but then really starting to win based on this experience from testing it out and doing it better each time. So then in 2020, which is the pandemic year, it was the summer of Black Lives Matter in the United States. So there was a lot of, you know, new movement energy, a lot of uncertainty politically. With the national presidential election, that's when Biden finally got elected against Trump. But in New York City, DSA, they had developed enough confidence at that point to run a whole slate of candidates for the state assembly and state senate, which are the state legislative bodies in New York. And Zohran was one of them. And those candidates, I think, mostly were chosen based on identifying districts that were promising. It wasn't that, you know, Zohran had just appeared as a good candidate along with the other 3 or 4. They had identified districts that were favorable to demographics for the programs we wanted to run. And enough people had developed experience to start to think about what kind of person would be a good candidate. So not just, you know, the number one factor was not they want to run for office and, you know, expect us to support them. It was really kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, we want people to run who have some experience of a collective membership democracy. We want to be confident that they're going to work with us on driving a program in government. So Zohran won. I think it was actually a pretty slim race against a kind of establishment candidate in a district called Astoria in Queens. He ended up winning along with, I think, all of them that year. And then over the next 4 years, they built up a strong record of being very agitational against Democrats, and pushing for left policies, and then winning a bunch of them because of how they were strategically organizing. So that was all the base for him to then be in a position to run for mayor and for the chapter to just decide to fully support that.
Yeah, and I think it's also relevant that the chapter in that time, right, DSA is never only electoral work. So at the same time, the chapter was expanding its presence in a bunch of unions. It was really important that Zohran got several union endorsements early on because unions often default to endorsing the establishment candidate. The fact that he got some of the more powerful unions in New York, bigger voting blocks, and also like unions who are going to turn people out to the doors, endorsed him early. And that comes from, you know, DSA prioritizing getting folks into the labor movement. I think the same was true of some tenants organizations and some of our social issues organizations who we had worked with extensively on, you know, anything from putting a rally together to fighting for some big piece of legislation to be passed. So building out those coalitions and getting people into unions kind of gave the reach in the different pieces of working class organization that you need to, because it's never just going to be one thing for something as big as New York City mayor.
Yeah, a bunch of those threads had just been building for years until the point where the organizations that endorse Zohran kind of represent the outlines of, you know, what you would consider a labor party, like a left labor coalition. And that comes through more and more intentionally merging electoral and labor organizing. Like one of the endorsements from UAW, United Auto Workers, Region 9A in New York City, endorsed him pretty early on. And that's in part because one of the other electoral candidates who won last year, New York City DSA's most recent electoral victory for state assembly, is named Claire Valdez. She was a membership coordinator in the chapter, somebody with strong experience in the chapter. She was also a member of UAW. So she got elected because of New York City DSA and UAW supporting her so thoroughly. And then because she was in that position, she was able to get the union to very quickly endorse Zohran. Another important endorsement was from DC 37, which is the public sector's union, a public sector workers union, which is really powerful and typically has been like very cautious, very conservative, especially because they're public sector workers. They want to, you know, be able to, their leadership has prioritized just working with whoever gets elected mayor. So a lot of DSA members organized internally for weeks and months to make there be an endorsement at all, because typically I think they hadn't really endorsed before. So they kind of set a process in motion and then, you know, talked to enough people to make Zohran be the one that was one of the final endorsees and not Eric Adams or Cuomo.
And when the campaign is up and running, the New York Post described New York DSA as a socialist army. But at the same time, we are also seeing mainstream media try to explain the Zohran's success by saying he's the TikTok guy with the cool videos and fun videos, and of course they are fun. They are quite cool,
totally.
and he's but it is more than just a TikTok guy and smart social media. So tell us a bit more about the campaign strategies and also the ways that you have managed to get people that doesn't vote to vote in the primary and mobilize people of those who the other part of the Democratic Party and other parties doesn't acknowledge as important voters, such as Muslims, Southeast Asians, and so on.
Yeah, young people.
Young people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to get like super far into the highly specific USA, the way our voter lists work and how you get them, but yeah, they made a point of targeting folks specifically who they knew to be voters, but rarely primary voters, which is, a good sign that somebody kind of gets that they probably should vote, but maybe hasn't become as kind of attached to that process. So that's a kind of exciting and interesting twist that the Democrats, they can't think of that because they can't think outside of the same formulas they've been using forever. And we're going to watch them now very quickly suddenly take the brightly colored kind of 70s branding, and it might look, the Zohran branding is kind of Bollywood 70s, so they might do like pick a different thing 70s, there'll be like disco 70s and punk 70s. Don't worry, it'll be everywhere. They'll suddenly, all the vaguely progressive guys, they're all going to grow a beard, and people are going to be doing TikTok dances, and it's going to be incredibly ineffective because none of them are going to be saying anything.
It just like the program and the set of policies just has been so core to it all along, and the other parts of the campaign have been so effective. His communications has been so effective and really groundbreaking in many ways, to be using video the way he does to reach so many people. But it's all so integrated. Like, it was just very we haven't been directly involved in the campaign, but I'm just speaking based on what I've heard some of the organizers talk about. It's just really apparent that the point of the communications is to communicate the program, the basic set of policies, to as many people as possible in very targeted ways. So he did turn out a lot of people who were not reliable voters, which is also kind of an innovation that was just based on identifying, demographically. There are just hundreds of thousands of people who are part of the working class in New York City, newer immigrant communities. Like, the top 3 spoken languages in New York City now are Spanish, Chinese, and Bangla. And there's also, Korean speakers and, Haitian Creole. And the campaign made it a priority to communicate in all those languages to the, people who might be monolingual speakers, who might not even know English very well, but are voters who are like voting residents. So that really worked. And just doing the very intentional, consistent community outreach like that, he did go to, probably most of the mosques in the city over the course of 8 months. Often multiple times, that really built a lot of trust. And he was just showing up to not say like, hey, I'm like you, I'm also Muslim. It was about the program. He was also doing this in kind of the, hipster neighborhoods, like, a lot of DSA's base of like younger people, like very queer. He was also showing up there and communicating the same set of things. And just really over the course of this campaign started to stitch together this coalition of like all these different kind of groups, often groups that are pitted against each other based on identity politics or kind of culture war things. He was communicating this set of economic cost of living demands to everybody, and that just built trust in this project. And then the videos that go viral, it's it was just about reaching people in authentic, like funny ways. Like, he's a charming person, but also
he is a charming person.
Totally. But it just, at the core is the message and the organization.
Absolutely. And the message has been so clear. It's hard to miss. If you've seen just a glimpse of the Zohran campaign, it's affordability. Mm-hmm. Can you say something about how he just kept track on these issues without neglecting everything else?
Yeah, this is something that, it's something that I feel like really probably has to be taught, to people. And this is why, we like to say too, like, yeah, Zohran's amazing. It's great that he specifically is going to be mayor, but we think there are Zohrans all over the country. Like in every community, there are people who could be, not just because they're unique and special, like could become a great politician, but can learn through collective organization how to do, message discipline, how to do, how to just have one-on-one conversations or in groups. So the way he was able to just maintain that consistent messaging, it's in some ways, or in a lot of ways, like Bernie Sanders. Like we loved Bernie Sanders because he had this consistency. Like no matter what kinds of questions would be thrown at him, it could be bizarre, like attacks or whatever, he would just instantly reframe within 2 sentences to Medicare for all and inequality, the 1%, the 99%. So I think Zohran has developed the ability to do that, and by always bringing it back to this core set of demands, that also gave him, I think, more credibility to be able to talk about things like Palestine, to talk about immigration, migrants' rights, to talk about trans rights, to talk about, to be very forthright, to be very, to hold his ground when any of those things are being attacked, and especially on Palestine. He's been attacked so viciously, and the right wing has made an attempt to make the campaign entirely about that, and he's just been able to weather it because he's really integrating it like across the board. He's not throwing anyone under the bus by only focusing on economic demands, and because he stood his ground on all of these core things, that's actually built trust, like on Palestine. And instead of it being a liability, I think it actually brought a lot of people into thinking like, okay, if he stands his ground on that while being attacked so viciously and constantly for that, then actually maybe I trust more that he actually might deliver on universal childcare or fast and free buses or freezing the rent.
Yeah. And, we hear this over and over. And I don't want to give advice to the Democrats again. But the Democrats tend to sort of fall into this trap of, we call it like the culture wars or whatever. And you hear it said sometimes kind of derisively on the left, oh, we're not fighting the culture wars. It's true. We should not fall into culture war traps. That doesn't mean we're throwing anybody under the bus. It doesn't mean that anybody's like identity is up for debate. And Zohran is really good at being like, I'm not debating somebody's humanity with you. Why don't you want people to have free childcare? Like that's and he's better. That what I just did is not smooth. He does it in a way that's very smooth, and you can be trained to do that. He's and should. So I think that sort of question of should we fight more culture wars? No, right? Again, it's the wrong question. No, because we shouldn't fall for that framing. We should call rights non-negotiable and fight for the economic demands at the same time. And I think that's maybe the magic blend.
So we are at the position now where we can see that Zohran is most certainly going to win. But what we have seen during this time is also how the Democratic establishment have tried to sort of manage this situation. After he won the primary, the willingness to endorse him hasn't been that high. But the longer the campaign has run, the more evident it has become that he's actually going to win. We can see the governor falling into line, and Hakeem Jeffries sort of made a endorsement the other day. Are they feeling scared of Zohran and the DSA?
They should be.
Yeah, I think clearly yes. Like instantly after he won the primary, like people in the media and the political class were reaching out to ask like, so what's next? Are you going to primary? Who are you going to primary? Like, are you going to go after Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries?
Are you?
And that's for New York City DSA members to decide. But just they are scared. Like clearly they're very reactive. And I think, some of them seems to have better self-preservation instincts than others. Like I think somebody like Kathy Hochul, who's governor, who has been, like a very direct target of New York City DSA because she has opposed a lot of DSA's priorities as governor or helped block them. But, she, I guess, after seeing the writing on the wall and seeing that this is a very strong, powerful base, has endorsed Zohran. And, on some level, like, it seems like your social democrats here, like some of them who maybe have better instincts, realize like, okay, this is an organized base that maybe I would benefit more from having on my side or being on their side versus the fascists who actually, are against what I care about too. So others like Hakeem Jeffries, like I think he really hates DSA.
Yeah.
Like it's very public. He's very actively supported primary people against us, or threatened to primary people we already have in office now. So that he finally came around shows some instinct that maybe I can't keep holding out because maybe that threatens my own base actually. So we'll see. The exciting thing for me about this race and how many liberals or people in the Democratic establishment are reacting is that this is the first time really that I can think of that the left has won a top seat and liberals are kind of coming along as part of the coalition instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
That's been like my entire, time on the left has been like, okay, well, Democrats are in charge and we're a bloc internally agitating for what we want and we can pressure them. But now it's just, and they have always tried to shut us out,
Yeah.
So now to be in the other position and, inviting them, as Zohran is really good at just inviting everybody to be part of the project in a way that also is like a difference for the left, I think.
Yeah,
we're
did you see Brad Lander dancing the other night? Just absolute amazing stepdad dancing in a wedding kind of energy. It's
Yeah.
really...
But just for the left, for leftists to be in the position to be in power and then invite people to help enact the left agenda is just a very fundamental shift in anything that we've had in U.S. politics in a very long time.
But do you think this shift is going to stay or as soon as that Zohran wins, that they're going to back down?
There will be many challenges at every step.
Yeah, it'll be,
we don't trust them at all. It's
some amount of steps forward, some amount of steps back until
And
we have seized the means of production completely, right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna just
like
always
we
be
know
that.
we're going to have to organize. I mean, that we got this far is because we've always, like New York City DSA has organized very strategically to like never trust people in power, to often be very confrontational against people in power, but make sure you're organizing the base for your goals. So right now the goal is, it's been to elect Zohran as mayor, but with a very clear set of platform planks. So that's still going to have to be, people have to keep organizing. It's everybody understands that a lot of outside organizing will have to happen to assemble the forces to help enact an agenda. So that's going to be our focus.
Yeah, because when he wins, that's just the first step. Then we need to make every promises happen, and perhaps even more. And that will also be needed organized people to push the city hall, the state level, the governor, and so on. Because just because he wins the election doesn't mean he can push through all his agendas. So is the debate and discussions there yet? How you're going to be organized within the DSA after a big win like this?
I think there's a lot we'll have to keep figuring out as we go along, and that's really up to folks in New York City DSA to figure out how they keep organizing. I think Zohran is now representing millions more people. Like DSA is part of the base that elected him, so there are going to be all sorts of pressures. And it's a city of 8 million people. New York City DSA has 11,000 members, so that's a fraction. So I think the goal for New York City DSA has to keep being how to keep organizing 8 million people from the bottom up. Yeah. So that has to keep being the project.
Yeah. The thing about the DSA method is like we just have to keep organizing. Like the question, the answer is always the same, right? We just have to keep organizing. I would be surprised if there aren't a couple more city council candidates in the next election, though I don't know for sure. But things like that, like there will be, both sort of political decisions that are made, but also, DSA will continue to organize within the labor movement, will continue to organize within the tenant movement and within social issues movements. And that's because Zohran can't fix the United States alone from the office of mayor of New York City, right? That's never going to be, I know, wouldn't wave his magic mayor wand and poof.
Yeah, and we're talking about enacting the positive parts of his agenda, but a clear reality is going to be that the Trump administration will use the power of the federal government to do everything they can to block that agenda from being enacted. Trump has been threatening to send the National Guard into New York City, which they've done with a bunch of major American cities already. ICE is going to, be sent to deport and harass and, intimidate people. So there are a lot of things that will have to be defensive too. And that's where organizing many people outside of government will keep being important. That's where, a broader coalition is going to be important. That's where, just a lot will have to happen to protect the city and its people. And that's, we're all very aware of what those challenges could be. Funding could be cut off at the very least from the federal government. So people are really thinking very seriously about what it'll take to keep, a left project like cohesive and growing while under attack.
Yeah, it's easy also to get stuck and just look upon what's happening in New York. But Zohran isn't the only one running. It's not a one-trick pony. It would be easy for the opponents of DSA to say, okay, this is New York. It's only happening here, there. But we can see it happening in different parts of the country. In Minneapolis, for example, you have and other places. So tell me, what's happening outside New York? So we just don't stare us blind.
That's where there are other examples. Like Zohran is, New York City is the biggest city in the country, so it makes sense that it's getting so much attention in the media capital. But DSA chapters are running pretty amazing races all over the country. So you mentioned Omar Fateh in Minneapolis, who's also running for mayor as a young, millennial Muslim socialist who comes out of DSA. He was in the state government with a block of Twin Cities DSA members in the state Senate. So that's one block. There's Kelsey Bond in Atlanta running for city council. There are examples all over the country.
Yeah, Willie Burnley Jr. in Somerville, which is a suburb of Boston. I think, we have a couple dozen at least, and this is an off year. Most of our elections take place on even years, so on an odd year.
It's often municipal elections.
Right. Lots of candidates all over the country. As an upstate New Yorker, I'm obliged to be like, it's not just New York City. Actually,
Ithaca,
New York. I actually don't think Ithaca has. Oh wait, yes they do. They might. Yeah. There is one.
Mm-hmm.
Hannah Schvetz is Ithaca, and I think Jorge maybe already won his. Anyway, we've got them everywhere. They're everywhere.
Socialists everywhere.
I think we have over 500 socialists in office throughout all of our chapters now, or people who are affiliated with DSA or who have been at some point endorsed. And a lot of them are in places that would surprise you. Corpus Christi, Texas, which is a kind of border city way down at the bottom of Texas. San Antonio, Texas has a pretty extensive
they
program.
have at least 2. I think they're running a couple more for city council. Missoula, Montana, they have a slate of 4 DSA members running for city council. So this is happening all over the country. So hopefully, ideally by the end of the year, we have a lot of different case studies to see how socialists govern, not just New York City.
Yeah, and for Swedish listeners, a city council is a very small council compared to Swedish municipalities, fullmäktige, where it's a lot of people. So getting a couple of people on a city council is big. But I think we're going to wrap up this with one final question. How are we going to celebrate the victory on Tuesday?
Well, my plan had been to just go to bed, like my plan always is. I'm like the let's do our work during the day girl here at DSA. But alas, that is not when the parties happen. So I believe I'm going down to New York City. I am a mom, and I have been away for quite a while, so I'm trying to figure out arrangements for that. But either way, I will stay up late and be very, very excited to watch it all go down. I am going to plan to stay up late and hope for the best, which is that we find out by 8:00 like last time.
Yeah.
New York City DSA is for sure going to have some kind of watch party or celebration. I was there the night of the primary win, where I think they had 7 different watch parties, and all of their different. They have 8 branches across New York City geographically. So I think they had one in each one. So my intention was to start in South Brooklyn, where I had been canvassing, and then make my way up eventually to Astoria, hitting up a few different ones. But yeah, just because it was called so early, I was in Sunset Park, and then the first 2 hours it was called, and then everybody just started screaming and celebrating, and like, what? We were shocked. So I just was like, I don't want to be stuck on the train or in a cab for an hour to go to the next one. I'm just going to stay here all night. And it was great. So
you're staying at one place this time, celebrating because it's going to be early victory?
Yeah, I will definitely be celebrating with my comrades in New York City, DSA. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. It's been really good to learn about how we didn't even talk much about what you're doing here, but it's been really, interesting and inspiring for us to see, how you're dealing with realities of governing. We need all the help we can get to figure it out and make sure we do it right in New York.
We're building socialism together.
Exactly.
Together, if it's not international, is it even socialism?
Exactly.
Not really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Den 4 november är alltså valet till borgmästare i New York. Största sannolikheten kommer Zohran att vinna. Men för att hålla er uppdaterade, prenumerera på kanalen genom att klicka prenumerera här nere. Eller så går ni in på www.denamerikanskadrömmen.se där ni kommer kunna följa alla uppdateringar om vad som händer i valet i New York, men också vad som händer inom den amerikanska vänstern överlag. Så missa inte det. Prenumerera, gå in på denamerikanskadrömmen.se.